Sometimes political winds blow in very interesting directions. Alex Salmond once appeared fated to spend his life on the political margins, but now he's hailed in Scotland as some kind of national saviour. In 2007, he became the Scottish First Minister. 4 years later, against not inconsiderable odds, he was elected as part of a majority SNP government. He wants Scotland to separate from England and from Westminster, and now the SNP are firmly in charge. There's a real possibility of that happening. To some people, he's arrogant and smug. To others, he's got brilliant leadership qualities. I've come to Edinburgh to find out the truth about the man some people call Week. Can you pick some words to describe your First Minister, Mr. Salmond? What do you think of him?
Jovial.
I think he's a man with an overinflated ego.
I think over-enthusiastic, doesn't always come through with what he says he's going to do, you know, maybe a bit not quite with it.
I think he's quite nice, to be honest. Like, no looks-wise, obviously, but he is.
Astute, determined.
I think he's quite a nice man and he's very straight to the point. Goes for the jugular.
He's got a particular idea of what Scottish identity is. I think it is quite inclusive, but it is Scotland the brave.
He's got great oratory powers as well. He listens to the people as well. He delivers. First Scottish government in ages have actually listened and delivered.
I believe he is more concerned with the SNP than he is in providing benefits to the Scottish public.
Very, very clear vision of how he would like things to be in Scotland.
One impressive report you've given him there. Alex Salmond, you're a politician. It's in the nature of politics that there's a mixture of opinions about you, but nonetheless, your approval ratings are pretty much unprecedented. You pulled off the feat of leading a majority SNP administration. You must wake up every morning wondering when it's all going to start to go wrong.
Well, I like to be optimistic. I'm trying to stay in touch with the nation. You know, they used to say there was a deeply imbued pessimism among Celts that they would. That's what they would tend to do. You know, why is it all going so well? Oh dear, something might happen soon. I've tried to introduce or help introduce to the country the idea that things might get better, as opposed to all of a sudden they're going quite well but might get worse. So in keeping with the optimism I'm spreading around the country, I try to retain a bit of it myself.
But for you yourself, this current amazing run of fortune inevitably won't last, will it?
Well, it depends how much you think it's fortune and how much you think there might be something substantial. I mean, there's that great story about Gary Player, you know, when he won the Masters at the age of about 46, and I had a 64 in the last round. In the press conference afterwards, somebody said, "Oh, it's the greatest round of golf I've ever seen, but you were quite lucky, Mr. Player." To which he replied, the more I practice, the luckier I get. The more the SNP government practices, the luckier we've got.
Big question. How will we judge the success or failure of an SNP government by the time we get to 2015?
Well, three things. I hope people will, in relative to what the circumstances of the time, we'll see an improved economy, a better society. That's a good society.
What does that mean?
Well, a society which has tried to, in difficult economic times, keep a hold of some things which are more important than economic circumstances.
Such as?
Free education, for a start, and defended that. Or, for example, the idea of the social wage, the idea that some things should be removed, particularly when times are difficult from budgetary pressure. Prescription charges would be a good example of that.
We're back then to that flavour of Scotland being akin to one of the social democratic countries of Scandinavia. They're the kind of things that denote it. I mean, your Auditor General has made noises recently about whether that sort of vision is affordable, given where we are, given where Scotland is economically.
Well, obviously there's a huge challenge involved in this. We believe it's affordable, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. I'll just point out that a distinguishing feature of the Scottish Government compared to United Kingdom governments over the last 4 years is that every year, by necessity, the Scottish Government has balanced its budget. Not in a single year has the United Kingdom Chancellor managed to come anywhere close to that. On the contrary, about £150 billion.
Official figures of late have said that in 2009 to 10, Scotland ran a budget deficit of about £9 billion.
But that's including all public spending and revenue in Scotland, and that deficit, of course, it's our figures, is less than the comparable United Kingdom deficit. I mean, Scotland is 1/10 of the United Kingdom.
But nonetheless, if you're running a £9 billion deficit according to government figures, you wonder whether that sort of social democratic paradise that you're talking about is affordable, is practicable.
Right. The only country in Europe not running a deficit is Norway. Norway has the great virtue of having access to its own oil wealth, of course, but you would expect under current circumstances country to be running a deficit. I just point out to you that a 9 billion deficit you mentioned in Scotland proportionately is much less than the United Kingdom government's deficit. Could it just be that we actually run things better in Scotland? Isn't there a case and a proposition that we actually can manage things rather better in Scotland than happens elsewhere, certainly in recent times?
The other big watershed event on the horizon is a referendum on independence. We were out in Edinburgh today asking people how they felt about independence, and you won't be surprised to hear that some people are in favour of it and some people are very much against it.
It will be yes from me.
Really?
Yes.
Why do you think Scotland should be independent?
Because I think we can manage to hold our own.
I'm not fully convinced that we have the brain power, the capacity to run the country on an independent basis whatsoever.
And we support ourselves, you know, most of our industry comes from England. I mean, we can't stand on our own 2 feet, and I think some of his ideas are a bit wacky, really.
I would vote yes, just to stick it to Cameron, to be honest.
No.
Why?
I don't see Scotland fighting its own war all on its own. And so if Scotland, what is independence if it isn't being fully independent?
I think he's getting into people's brains and kind of maybe not quite giving them the full, like, what would actually happen if we were independent.
And what's the worst thing that could happen?
We would fall apart, really.
How do you answer the point, though, about the fact that oil and gas and the state of those markets would be so central to the performance of the Scottish economy as an independent nation that would make navigating your way through that volatility as a country very, very difficult and perhaps threaten the viability of an independent Scotland? What's the answer to that?
Glance across the North Sea, you'll see a country where oil and gas is an even greater share of the economy than it is in Scotland. And as opposed to having any difficulty in navigation, it's the only country in Western Europe running a budget surplus. It's got a fund for the future generations on reaching some £300 billion sterling now. If you go and ask somebody in Norway, when's your oil and gas going to run out? The answer is never, because the investment fund which they've built up just over the last 15 years actually will never run out. And provides stability and certainty to the Norwegian economy, not just incidentally guiding a path through uncertain times, but the only country in Western Europe able to chart a path through these uncertain times.
The highest that, I think I'm right in saying, that the poll rating in favour of independence has got, certainly of late, is about 44%, which is pretty good, no doubt. But it does sort of prompt the question, what do you do if you lose? I mean, your party's raison d'etre is independence. You're very upfront about that now. How does Alex Salmond politically survive in a world in which the Scottish electorate have rejected independence?
Well, you know, I spent a lifetime in politics answering hypothetical questions. I usually predicate...
It's not an unreasonable hypothetical question.
I didn't say it was unreasonable, but the reason that I've survived so long and done reasonably well to date is that I've always hypothesised on success rather than failure. I've always found it very bad politics, very bad life actually, to start wondering what you're going to do when you lose. I think you're far better to explain what you'll do when you win. And incidentally, I won't lose.
I may hold you to that. Here's a question about exactly that scenario that I've always wanted to ask you. If Scotland were to go independent, clearly you would be leaving a large number of English voters at the mercy of a very populist Tory-dominated English South. Tory government forever. Now, as someone who identifies with the political left and its ideas in Britain, that's a fairly nightmarish possibility to me, and I worry that you'd be leaving me in the lurch. We share a lot of social democratic values and so on, but you'd be saying, well, bye-bye, I'm leaving you at the mercy of what is increasingly clear, kind of crypto-Thatcherite Tory governments, you know, stretching into eternity, while you got on with creating a new Scotland. What do you say to people like me? I don't want you to leave for that reason.
I was always very impressed by the Billy Bragg idea, which is basically, I mean, I paraphrase him, and I'd probably do him a great injustice, but it's a few years since I read his book to this effect. But the idea that England would find itself when it had to account for itself in terms of how it developed its ideas, how it rediscovered and refound its own radical tradition. And I've always hesitated to do this, because the last thing I would want to do is to start preaching to the English about how to organise their own society. But I do actually believe if the English left and people in England rediscovered its radical tradition, then certainly England and perhaps even the world will be a much better place, because there is a rich vein of radicalism to be tapped. And you're not going to do that if you say, well, what we'll do is hope that the Scottish Labour Party might provide us with the occasional flawed leader.
So you're going to leave us to it, and the price we may have to pay is a long, long spell of Tory government?
Well, I think England's a great nation, and I think the English people will be more than capable, in due course and due time, of sorting out the Tory impostors who seized control of your parliament.
Alex Salmond, thank you very much.
Great pleasure, thank you.